let's finish up by talking about assumptions. Now, I'm guessing that in your bones, you know what an assumption is. It's just a little hard to put into words, right? Well, let's try. An assumption is a missing or invisible piece of evidence that the argument relies on to be true. And it might be easier to see this using the chart that we started this lesson off with. So here's my evidence right here. Here's my conclusion. Remember, a good argument is one where the conclusion follows directly from the evidence. All Californians are American, Bob is a Californian, therefore Bob is American. But if this conclusion relies on some outside piece of information that I haven't stated as evidence, well, then that outside piece of information is an assumption, and I could have multiple assumptions. To state the obvious, this is not a good argument. An argument that has a lot of assumptions is not a good argument because I'm not stating the evidence that I need. So with that general overview, pause the video right now and try this question out, identifying which one of these 5 answers is an assumption that the argument relies on. Okay, so we start off with all this evidence about who was where, when at Wembley Manor last night, and we conclude definitively that it was the pool boy. So just putting this into our framework here, that's the evidence and conclusion of the argument. But this argument relies on one big assumption. In other words, one big piece of missing evidence or assumed piece of evidence. What is that? Well, it's answer option B, that the amulet was stolen by an employee. And let me explain. Let's go back to Detective Lamar's process for figuring out who did it. Detective Lamar's only considered the possibility that an employee stole the amulet, right? She didn't even entertain the idea that a non-employee stole it. So we started with the assumption that the amulet was stolen by an employee. And if it wasn't, then this argument completely falls apart. And that makes answer option B an assumption. Now, just to eliminate the other ones here, Lady Worcestershire was romantically involved with the pool boy. The argument doesn't assume that. That doesn't need to be true for the argument to hold. There's a secret passageway from the guest house to the room that contains the safe. Well, if it was indeed the pool boy, then the pool boy could have gone some other route. This doesn't need to be true, right? The cook, the butler, and the maid are lying about their whereabouts last night. That doesn't have to be true in order to make the conclusion that we make. And Detective Lamar's is almost never mistaken. Again, does not have to be true. She could be correct in this case. She could not be. But this is not an assumption that we have to make in order for the argument to be true. The correct answer here is B.